We are wrapping up, and if we have Q&A, please wait for the microphone so we can all hear your questions. My tech team will be in the back. But today, I have Karen Habercoss. She's the Vice President, Chief Information Security and Privacy Officer, board member, expert witness at UChicago Medicine. As the Chief Information Security and Privacy Officer, she oversees security and privacy of a leading academic research and clinical health system. She has more than 15 years of progressive experience in the field. She's responsible for developing, implementing, and leading privacy and cybersecurity strategies, managing, mitigating risk, ensuring compliance, regulatory requirements for best practices. She's led a diverse and collaborative team of privacy and information security professionals. She's worked across business units, affiliates to assess, manage risk, protect patients, ensure resilience, secure data and assets. She leverages human behavior and relations to training and building strong partnerships and foster a culture of privacy and security awareness. She has an MBA and an MSW and she maintains an Illinois licensure in clinical social work. Additionally, she's a member of AAMC, Compliance Office Steering Committee, HIMSS, Gartner C-Level, Chicago, CISO Governing Body, and HSCC Cybersecurity Working Group, Privacy Security Task Group. And she is a regular speaker, and we are so happy to have her fill this keynote today. Today she's going to be speaking on from case files to firewalls and encryption, what a former social worker knows about security and privacy. So it is my true honor to welcome Karen Habercoss to the stage.
Thank you, Kim. Hi, everyone. Do I need to do something to get my slides up here or no? Oh, thank you. All right. Welcome to lunch. And I hope you're enjoying the day so far. As Kim said, my name is Karen Habercoss. She gave a mouthful about me. This talk today is going to be probably less about cyber and privacy in the tech world and more about human behavior. So you've heard a couple previous speakers sort of talk about attack patterns related to humans, and I'm going to sort of expand on that a little bit today in my talk. So I think I've watched a few of the speakers, and they all seem to ask, are you still with me? So I think I'm going to start by asking that. Hopefully everyone's still with me today. I'm certainly here. And let's start by saying, how many of you know or work with people? Yeah. All right. So good. We're on the right page, right? Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me just to start out. I love this quote. I have it in my office, and I use it a lot. It's never too late to be what you might have been. You know, lots of CISOs, when they give talks, especially when they retire or start to do something else, they usually start with saying, I'm a recovering CISO. You see that a lot. Well, to be fair, I am a recovering social worker. And so I have had quite a long career, and half my career was spent at the University of Chicago Medicine as a clinical social worker, treating adolescents, pediatric patients, and their families, many of whom had severe psychological, psychiatric, psychosocial disorders. So for the first half of my career, I have a lot of experience in understanding people. Along the way, as obviously you can tell, I don't need to tell you, I made a career change twice over. I went into compliance, privacy, and now privacy and cybersecurity, all at the University of Chicago Medicine. I had a pretty small break, but for the vast majority of my career, that's where I've been. And so this quote always resonates with me. So I'm hoping everybody here loves the work they're doing. If for some reason you don't, that's okay too, because it's never too late to be what you might have been. So you can feel free to make changes that move you to where you want to be. And so this is the other thing that I love about this quote is that it's attributed to someone named George Eliot, who on first blush, as you might think is a man or a male. And the reality is that is not. Her actual name was Mary Ann Evans back, in early times when women wanted to become writers. They weren't seen as nearly as important in that field back in, the 19th century, early 19th century, which, was the 1800s. So she changed her name to George Eliot and had a pretty successful writing career. Okay, let's get started. The disclaimer that every speaker has, I won't go through it, but essentially I'm here on my own accord. I'm not really speaking on behalf of University of Chicago Medicine. Okay, so why this topic? I sort of talked a little bit about that, and we joked at the beginning about we all know people. It's impossible to go through life, no matter how much you may not like people. You're just going to interact with people, whether it's at work, at home, in friendships, anywhere you go, there's people. And so, when you hear me speak today, and I'll sort of remind people as I'm going through the talk that we see people, and we're going to talk more about the work situation, in the cyber world or the tech world through the lens of, depending on where you're at, as an employee, you have other employees that you work with, you have business people that you work with, but you also have threat actors that you're defending against in the cyberspace. They're people too. I know it seems like a strange thing for me to say, but you will very soon find out that they are humans just like the rest of us for the most part, and they have the same types of relationships and things that we have when they leave their work behind. So aside from that, we also, most of us, unless you own your own company, and then you have other folks that you're accountable to, but most of us are accountable to leaders above us, leaders lateral to us, and we're accountable to customers. So there's just people everywhere in our lives. Okay, so why this topic? Why is it important to talk about human behavior in the privacy and security space? Well, there's lots of slides I could have chosen to sort of set the stage for this, but this is one that I liked, which is that sometimes we forget, especially in our world, we see data breach a lot, more than we should, in my opinion. And so because of that, we sometimes think like, well, it's just going to happen, or people understand their data is available, for sale, or, all these things. And I think what's interesting being the privacy officer is that we send breach letters to people. Just like you all receive through the mail, the proverbial letter that's, like, we're very sorry, we've had a data incident, your information, is this that's been out there. Here are some things you can do to protect yourself. That's all privacy stuff. But our consumers, or all consumers, of which we are also a part of, 68% of people are concerned about this, even still. This is a newer metric. This is not that old. So despite the fact that we all get breach letters, we all know our data is susceptible to breach, and there's a little bit of breach letter fatigue, this remains a very important issue for people. People want data privacy. In the security space, it's important because there's lots of research coming out now that correlates all of the digital innovation that we're doing with data breach. So because I live in a world of privacy and security, I can definitively tell you that this is a whole nother talk, folks, but I can definitively tell you if you work in security and you are not aligned and talking to your privacy folks on a very regular basis, I highly encourage you to do that. And the same in reverse. If you work in privacy and you're not talking to your security folks on a very regular basis, you're missing something there. Because I can see it from both sides of the house on my teams. And on a correlated basis, they have to be able to work hand in hand. And it can't just be when security is experiencing an incident or when privacy has a breach. It has to be all the time, constant. Because, as you're about to hear me talk about, relationships matter. So you can see a little bit here about cybercrime. I don't have to go into that. This room is probably very familiar with the statistics on how lucrative the money is in cybercrime. And then I would be remiss if I didn't throw in a slide about artificial intelligence. So you can see here the importance of this slide is really just to show you by way of orange that these things are very important in AI. Those are things like privacy and security at the very top. Okay. So this is a very complex issue. And that sort of goes without saying. So we need to think about things that are complex from multiple avenues. And so you can see here that it's really important to note that human beings are still a primary threat vector to us. They just are. And I don't know that you're ever going to be able to fully take that off the table. And so we have to learn other ways to understand. That being said, insider threat remains a very constant challenge for us. And when I use the term insider threat, I'm not just talking about people who are actively trying to be malicious to our organizations. I'm talking about people that, make a mistake, do the wrong thing. They're trying to do the right thing, but they're working too fast. There's lots of reasons why these things happen. And so, not to think about things as always malicious. As a privacy professional, I can tell you that most people, and I think I have a slide about this, most people aren't really trying to be malicious. They just are making mistakes, or they didn't know the right thing to do, or they're working too fast. There's other reasons for it. So understanding people from that perspective can help as well. The culture in which you work matters. Again, so just to be clear also, nothing I'm about to talk to you about today is going to be sort of novel and inventive. It's just I'm pulling it all together from a human perspective. So these things aren't necessarily like, wow, I never knew that. It's just something to consider. So work culture matters, and this concept it comes a lot in compliance, which is the concept of tone at the top. So the highest, most leaders of the organization are important. Because if they are not producing this concept of value about privacy, security, just humans, then the rest of the organization doesn't see that as important. I heard somebody the other day in another organization than mine, a CTO, was talking and talking about, we were talking about like how security is hard these days, no secret to anyone in this room. And, the CTO was like, yeah, but it doesn't feel like my CIO that the CISO and the CTO both report to have made that a priority. That kind of feeling is disheartening, first off, but also important because that talks about the culture of that work environment. And that does have an impact on how people see each other. Leadership is also very material, meaning like the leadership that you portray, even if you're not a people leader, everybody is leading in their organization, in my opinion. Even when you go to talk to your peers or other people in the business, you're leading on behalf of cyber and privacy. And so you are also leading. But if you're also a leader, the way in which you present yourself to your staff, your organization, your higher-ups matters, because it also shows how you feel about the work you're doing or the importance of the work that you're doing. And then, sort of talking about here that people watch how you respond. So, people are very adept. They might not be able to put language to it, but people know when others are being not authentic. And so, this is a really important concept in my mind, of leading with other people and being as authentic as you can. I was just talking with my friend Dejanette earlier over here. So, this is a concept that I think is hard when you first start out in your career, because everything you do, you feel like you're being watched. You want to make a good impression, but I think as you grow, it becomes more and more important, and you understand more how it is that you show up in any environment, work, home, friends, whatever, as the best authentic self you can, because people can often see through that. And so that's something that's really important. Okay, and then this is, again, also not really novel, but privacy and security incidents are costly. And I don't just mean from a money standpoint. We all know they're very costly. We've heard a couple talks about what those metrics look like. But they're costly from a human standpoint. If anybody has ever been involved in a serious cyber event or privacy event, it's hours and hours and hours of your life, hours away from your time off, hours away from your family. I was talking with a CISO that had a ransomware event. They were down for, I don't know, a little more than 30 days. And he did not have a day off in more than 90 days straight. I mean, that takes a toll on you as a person. Everybody needs to feel some downtime. And so that's what I mean when I say it's costly from other standpoint besides just financial. And then there's this concept of, which I like as a social worker, this concept of psychological wounds. When we are leading with our authentic self and we care about other people, and then we have cyber events or privacy events, we actually feel that internally. Nobody wants our people's data or our organizations to be harmed. And that has what we call in sort of the clinical social work realm, these psychological wounds, chinks in the armor that grow over time. Work, we just talked about this, workforce, I like to use the term workforce, it's kind of generic, but the people we work with they're human at the end of the day. We're all fallible, we're all imperfect. Nobody gets it right 100% of the time. I'm happy if I get it right 50% of the time. So, it's really important that you have to understand that we are all a product of where we come from, so our past, where we're at right now, and where we want to go in the future. Every single person in this room, everybody comes from someplace, you're somewhere present, and you generally want to be someplace in the future. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some social work principles. I'm going to sort of set the stage for the talk. And so I'm not going to read the slides, but essentially what you can see here is that in the field of social work, most of us who are working in social work come from these areas. We sort of subscribe to these areas, meaning that we are here to serve people. I think cyber and privacy folks are in that same boat. Rarely people are in cyber and privacy to serve themselves. Maybe they like tech, but it's usually because they want to protect something. They want to do something for people or their organization, or they want to have some greater good. Most of us in social work stand for something related to social justice, meaning that we understand that we are one very small part of a much larger world. There's, like we talked about this many times now, there's people everywhere. And so most of us are not operating in the world as self-centered. And so this concept of like being for something more than just you. Most of us have this. And then this idea about dignity and worth, meaning that everybody is worth something. Every person is worth something. And that sort of, in my mind, goes back to sort of cyber and privacy too. We have, we hold consumers, we, manage technologies that hold consumers' data, those kinds of things. And that is worth something, not just from a financial standpoint, but from the people we serve standpoint. You can also see here the importance of human relationships. I won't berate that. We've been talking about that. This concept of integrity. In cyber, that's one of the principles that I'm going to sort of flash really quick on the screen. In social work, we think about integrity of people, and in cyber and privacy, we think about integrity of systems or data. It's all interwoven. And then this idea of being competent. I mean, everybody in this room is competent in your field. I know that because you're here learning something. Okay, so I'm not going to go too far into the security principles because we all hopefully know them. And I was sort of talking a little bit when I was talking about social work values, how that fits together. So this whole like confidentiality, integrity, availability, that we know, authentication, you are who you say you are, and then this non-repudiation. So we all know this very well. I'm going to talk a tiny bit about privacy because sometimes this is sort of a lesser known to security folks. So in the privacy world, we subscribe to these sort of privacy principles, kind of like social work principles or cyber principles. But again, you can start to see here all very similar. These ideas about, in privacy space, the data we hold needs to be accurate. And because people have dignity and worth, if the data is not accurate, all kinds of decisions get made about people. That some might be fair and some might not be fair at all. And that doesn't fit if it's not accurate. And this idea that if things are not accurate, people should be allowed to make corrections to it. So that everything flowing makes sense. This idea of accountability, that we're accountable to each other, that we're accountable to the technology or the role that we're in or the data we hold. Authority, that we have the ability to do the things that we are tasked to do. We're not exceeding that authority, but it's this concept of sort of operating at the license you hold. We talk about that a lot in social work because of the licensure, but it exists in privacy with certification. Same thing in security. Minimization, that we're not collecting data on people we don't need, because that's how we run into trouble. And this goes back to the original slide. About 68% of consumers are worried about data privacy. And so this is a thing for people. They don't want us to be collecting all kinds of data. We might want it as a business. That's more of a business proposition, I would argue. I don't know that that's a human proposition. And what I have found, at least I can tell you in my space, which is healthcare and patients, when you say to a patient, hey, would you like us to use this really cool technology? Let's talk about AI for a moment, because that's sort of the thing du jour. We can use this AI technology. It's really great. It's going to help us with efficiency. It's going to help you with all of these, tasks that you need to do or understanding in healthcare. Most patients, when presented that way, would say, yes, that sounds amazing. But when you come in, when you say, but here's the risk from a privacy and cybersecurity perspective, which they don't understand, the general public, then most of them are like, oh, wait a minute. They pause. Doesn't mean they still say no. It just means they don't understand it like we do. Okay, this idea about quality and integrity, we just sort of talked about that. I don't want to keep going over the same things. Individual participation, that people matter and they should be participating with us. We shouldn't be making decisions all by ourselves. This concept of purpose and why we're using things, why we have this information, why are we bringing in all this technology? Do we really need it? Security, again, safeguards, and then what I was just talking about in the example I gave is this idea of transparency. How important is it to us and our organizations to be open and honest with the people that we serve? And it could also be employees, right? Because a lot of us manage tech from the employee side too. And it's our employees too. We're holding data not only on our consumers, but our employees as well. And so how transparent are we with everybody about what we capture, what we're doing with it, how it's being used? And that all, sort of goes back to people's dignity and worth as humans. I was sort of talking about this slide as we went along, but this sort of shows at the top, you can see all the social work principles, and then underneath, you can see where privacy and security principles fit. In some cases, some of them fit under multiple categories, but at the end of the day, I would say that privacy security has a lot to do with social work because of the human part of it. All right, so let's talk about humans. Just a little general overview, a little bit of neurology background here. We make decisions, mostly through the decision-making brain is really what we call it. And that's done, we could have, some people study to become neurologists for many, many years. That is not this talk, by the way. This is one slide, very, quick about how do humans make decisions. So again, not a surprise. This is a very complex process. But what happens is we all take information from all kinds of places. Like you're listening to me now, but your brain is also taking information about the sound, the lights, the people by you, the food on your table, what you smell, all of this, all at the same time. All this information is coming into us from all sides. And so we use of the brain what's called the executive functions to plan what we're going to do next. Are you going to eat more salad? Are you going to get up and go to the restroom? Like those kinds of things. Then also to make decisions. Impulse control. No one's heckled me yet, so thank you for all maintaining impulse control today. But this is the part of the brain that we're talking about. This concept of social behavior. Many of you are sitting at tables with people you may not know. That's the kind of thing that fits into social behavior. Are you going to find topics that you might have in common? Are you going to sit and eat quietly? Are you going to look at your phone? Those kinds of things are all part of how the brain has this executive function. Your personality, we all have one. And it doesn't matter what your personality is. They're all great, by the way. That's just who you are as a human. And so one of the things I would encourage you to do is understand your personality, because it will help you when you interact with other people. It will help you be more authentic. And then how we direct our goals. What do we want to do today? What do we want to do 3 years from now? What do we want to do 10 years from now, right? And then lastly, just very high level, these ideas of integrating these areas here about the memories we hold. So we all hold memories because, again, we're all coming from someplace. And some things are triggers for some of us. You may not even know it's triggering. You might smell something, somebody's perfume or cologne, and then it might take you back. And you're not processing it like I'm talking about it now. It happens in your brain. But these kinds of things, when you meet certain people, the way that they act or things that they say, might make you feel really good about the relationship off the bat, or might give you a little bit of pause. That is all happening in your decision-making brain. Same thing with rewards and consequences, which is what we're going to talk about, because when we get rewarded, when our brain feels rewarded, we want to keep doing those things. And when we feel consequences as humans, we become a little skittish, and in certain situations, we just back off completely. Okay, so this is a concept that I talk about a lot, which is everyone has a story, meaning every single one of us in this room, if we had enough time, could tell you where they come from, what their story is. Some people might be more adept, and use more colorful language to describe where they come from, but everyone's got a story. This is, personally about me, this is one of the main reasons I became a clinical social worker. And I will tell you, I use this concept every day in my leadership role in cyber and privacy. Why do my staff do the things they do? Why do my peer leaders do and say the things they do? Why do threat actors who are constantly coming at my organization do the things they do? Everyone has a story. That story shapes all of our experiences. That story also shapes our motivation, and it shapes the purpose for which we continue forward in the world. Okay, so I really want to stick with this concept at the end of motivation and purpose, because this is really what we're talking about. People do things, people act, people say things, people feel things, always motivated with purpose, both of those things. So there's either some positive aspect or some reward they're getting from this, their behavior, the things that they're saying over time. It makes them feel good. They're feeling rewarded. And so in this concept, understanding the people around you, coworkers, threat actors, whatever, what is the reward they're getting? Because if there wasn't a reward, they would be moving to the next step, which is harm avoidance. Meaning something bad has happened or will happen, people understand it. They're either not going to do it, they're going to slow walk it, something like that. That's the motivation, is that they have been harmed by something in that situation before, and their brain remembers that. Some people are also motivated, and their purpose is around their self-image. And self-image is a lot tied to how we feel about ourselves. So it's our confidence level or not confidence level. It's, again, how we present ourselves. And we talked about authenticity, but the sort of the counterpoint reality to that is we also all have a mask that we wear. Some people are more open, some people are more authentic, but there's always situations where people have some kind of mask. So just knowing that about people, or really the understanding that who is the person that you're interacting with them? Is it as authentic as they can be, or is it full on mask because there's some reason why they can't be that way? Which that some reason usually goes back to the past slide, which is everyone has a story and there's a reason why they can't be that way. This concept is sort of self-endorsement or really self-promotion. Some people, it's really important for them to promote themselves. They feel good about it. It goes back to inherent reward, or they don't promote themselves because at some point along the way, it didn't feel very good when they did, and so they're a little bit shy about that. Other people motivated just by information. Some people are just extremely curious. They just want to get information, take in all kinds of new ideas. How can they use it in their world? That's a personality trait for some people. Temperament, so are people quick to anger? Are people really chill even in the most difficult situations? People get motivated by that as well. Sometimes, depending on your past, you might not want to work for a leader that's hyped up all the time because there's something about that doesn't fit with you. Those are just things to think about in terms of human interaction. This concept of judgment. Some of us have really good judgment and some of us don't. This is really another human concept. So when you are talking and interacting with other people, this is something, because I question people's judgment a lot. It's like being the privacy officer, I think to myself, why did the person do this. Like, and a lot of the times it's a judgment thing. And I think to myself, like, I'm not really sure what your judgment was there. But what I love about my job is I get to ask and I get to use my social work skills. And so sometimes I might say to somebody when they've done something they shouldn't, what were you thinking? Tell me what you were thinking. Because I don't know. That goes back to people have a past. Like, there's some reason why they did. I just don't understand it because it doesn't fit with my worldview. But that doesn't make it less important. It just makes it different, and it makes you understand the other person better. And then there's this concept of sort of external lure, which, you know, cyber folks probably get more than others around the fishing metaphor, which is that there's something external that like makes you feel good about it. There's just something that is uncontrolled by you that, you know, brings people in. So you can sort of think about this sometimes as like, you know, people who are charismatic. Some people are just super charismatic, and other people have a harder time or have to work with it, or some people just don't even care to be charismatic. Okay, so let's talk about this. Humans have sort of three basic behaviors. You know, everything sort of fits into one of these three buckets. So that is that behavior follows like what is sort of I think I wrote here, status quo, until there is something negative or positive that happens. So we sort of talked about that a little bit in the last slide. People are really only going to change their behavior if something really, really great happens and they want that feeling again, or something really, really bad happens and it impacted them. And even sometimes they may not change, but essentially that's how human behavior works. It's kind of like a rewards system. Behavior is also a function of the person in the current situation they're in. So, you know, people react differently in different situations. Also, the choices we make always have and it's not consequences, but there's always some sort of interplay there. There's an interchange. Sometimes your brain is thinking about this unconsciously, and so it's like, if I do this, this will happen. If I do this, this will happen, and you don't even know it's happening. You don't even know your brain's working that way. Or sometimes we can be really thoughtful about that when we have time and insight into ourselves about, like, if I make this decision, then pretty sure this could happen, or if I make this, then this is going to happen. So that's sort of the basics of how humans work. It's very Pavlovian, right? Like, we're either rewarded or we're punished for the most part. Otherwise, we're just going to sit in status quo. After you consider that, this is going deep now, folks. And so after you consider this, some things are just related to your genetics. You can't help it. Some things are in your environment, how you grew up, who your parents are. I used to tell, you know, when I used to work with children in therapy, children and adolescents complain a lot about their parents or their guardians or their situation, which is their environment. That being said, for most of us, you can't choose that. And, you know, so that's really the concept. Some of us, just, you know, it's just like, that's your environment that you're in. What you can do, though, is choose the environment you're in today. And so that goes back to my original slide, which is that you can be something else if you want to. Lastly, these concept of sort of these socially social things that are competing and from social, like around the outside here, how emotionally mature you are. The children and adolescents that I used to see when I was doing therapy, many of them are emotionally stunted. You know, they didn't come from very good situations, otherwise they wouldn't be there to see me, and that matters. What you don't often think about, I'm pretty sure most people in this room don't think about, is your leaders, your peers, your employees, the people you meet on the street. Many of them are also socially and mentally stunted. You just don't know their background. So try to have a little compassion because you don't know about people's situation. You just never know where people have come from or what they're dealing with, you know, today. Culture is a big thing. I am Italian. very Italian. And, I could talk and give a whole discussion about what that means culturally, from the manner in which I grew up to what I still deal with today with my Italian family. So we all have that in our world, right? I mean, we all have cultural things that we operate under. How we communicate with each other. And then I'm going to talk about what does it mean to even go deeper. We all also have ethics that we deal with. Many of us, at least here in this country, have free will. And this concept of determinism, like we have the ability to some degree, and some of us more than others, determine our fate. Okay, so these things that I've been talking about all have these connections here. And so it's this concept of we have to trust at some level. You have to trust the people you work with. You have to trust, the people you live with. You have to trust your friends. You have to trust your leaders, all of those kinds of things. You got to be able to communicate. I'm just going to sort of run through this pretty quickly. You have to feel safe. If you don't feel safe in the environment that you have been in the past, or where you're going, or where you're at now, that's going to be a problem for you and for the people around you. This concept of feeling protected. So do you feel physically protected? Do you feel emotionally protected? What are the sort of the legal and ethical intersections of the decisions you're making, the decisions of people around you, what they're making? And as I'm talking through this, I'm asking you to sort of consider what I started with, which is that this goes not only for you and how you present to others, this goes to when you are with your coworkers, with your leaders, and even in your personal relationships. If you can occasionally, because this is not something, I realize I'm a social worker by heart, so this comes very natural to me because I've spent years refining this. But, if you can occasionally think that the other person comes from this same way, like they're still making their way in the world just like we all are. So this idea of sort of risk management, which we are all familiar with in this room, is a concept I don't need to talk about. We all have risks we manage and how we respond to that. This idea, the connections are also not just the intersection of all these things I just talked about, but this concept of influence. How influential do you feel as a human in your life? Whether that's at work, whether that's in friend relationships, family relationships, even consumer relationships. When you go, what frustrates me? I'll tell you. So here's me being my authentic self. When I try to return something at a store and there's some reason why I can't, I have zero influence. This is incredibly frustrating to me. So, there's a really basic sort of feeling that people have, this idea of your ability to influence even the most silliest of situations, means something to you. Because I bet there's tons of people in this room that it probably wouldn't even bother you. So that's what I mean. That's a function of what does that mean to have this ability to influence situations. I'll give you another example going back to my Italian heritage. When you're growing up, you don't have a lot of influence. It's your parents. And I suspect many of you that come, from certain cultures, same kind of thing. And so, this concept of understanding what does it feel like to have minimal influence as you're growing up, but then as you get out into the world, make your way in your career, and you start to actually get more influence and can use it, how comfortable do you feel with that? Is that something, that you kind of wrestle with because it's something in your background, or is that something you're willing to break out of? Those things are important. But also for those of you who are leaders, the employees who work for you, and even you working for somebody else, everybody has to feel like they can have some level of influence. That's why employees generally have a hard time working for people who are micromanagers, because it takes away this connection of influence. Okay, and so these are the things that you can influence. Your ability, is it limited? We talked about that. How you systematically go through the world, how your behaviors are, the environmental controls you have, both in the past, not a lot of control, but as you get older, lots more environmental control. How safe and how effective you can feel. Okay, so let's talk about this concept of pulling it all together. So again, we know this concept of risk, and not all risk is equal, right? And so just to sort of level set here, in our world, most of us see these three types of risk. There are lots of other risks, but let's just stay here for 1 second, which is that we see tons of technological risk. Who in this room has zero, and I mean zero, shadow IT going on? Nobody. Oh, you have zero. We'll have to have a talk after because I would love to employ you. I need to get there. Okay, so this is just a risk. We all have it, right? Shadow IT. Other risks we might have are, things like we don't have MFA everywhere we want it to be, or, we don't have a good handle on the data that's sort of leaking out of our organization. We all have situations. I mean, also, anybody in this room, if you are 100% up to date on all your patching and everything, also come see me after, because I want to find out how. I mean, that's just how it works. You have to be able to understand levels of risk because not all risk is equal. Sometimes you gotta patch, it's a risk, and sometimes you can wait a little bit longer, right? There's also this concept of human risk. We talk a lot about social engineering, but we also talked about this insider threat. So accidentally or inadvertently or maliciously letting data leak from organizations or being disclosed. There's also this concept that sometimes interactions we have, and I think I use the term here, errors of thought and action. And what I mean by that is, have you ever been in situations where somebody has said something or done something and you think something about that? Like you're like, oh, I think the person is saying this about the situation or me, or you have a thought about that interaction. But then you find out either very soon after or even later sometimes you were wrong. That means the situation was just misread. And so that's what I mean by error of thought and action. That happens to all of us, and that's a human risk, and that impacts the way that we interact with people. And then there's this concept that I love about human vulnerability, and now we're sort of going deep, which is that the people sitting around you here, many of whom you may or may not know, have human vulnerabilities. We all do. People in this room might have financial difficulties. Everybody's got personal pressures. And sometimes people's judgment is just plain flawed. And so because of that, that creates risk. So for example, we know that employees, when they have financial risk, could be, not always, but could be more apt to be a malicious insider. Not really a novel concept. I actually just read something. This is a really interesting study that I just read the other day that I shared with my team, which is that something like slightly more than 50% of college students, if they were working an internship in the tech field, might be enticed to be a malicious insider for the right money. Meaning, college is really expensive right now, and if that student thinks they can get away with it, they could be a malicious insider. We might not know that at the time. We want to help students. We want students to intern with us. That's an example of human vulnerability. Okay, so here, there's more. So risk is not just about the things we know, which is adversarial profiling, predicting attacker behavior, but it's also understanding the objectives of the people around us. And a lot of the stuff we just talked about, cognitive patterns, what is their mindset? I think we all know the mindset of an attacker, but do you know the mindset of the people you work with every day? Do you really know the mindset? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, if you're a close in the workplace. Maybe if you work fully remote, it's a little bit harder to build relationships. You still do, but nobody really knows what's going on with everybody. I'll tell you another funny story. Like my daughter's 25 now, but anybody who has junior high children, especially girls, will appreciate this story, which is that, girls in junior high have interesting mindset. Let me just say that to be sort of nice about it. And so I recall many times when my daughter came home in junior high being very upset about things that happened in junior high. That is really important, because what I would tell her is, you have no idea what is going on in that other person's home, in their background, in their situation. Now, when she's 12, that's of little comfort to her. But in this room, we're all adults. And so we understand this concept that you don't know what's going on fully with the people around you, because very few of us are so incredibly authentic and open that we just let it all out there. There are some folks that do, and that's a different discussion. But most of us have that tiny little bit of a mask where, we know what's appropriate to share and what's not with the people around us. But that doesn't mean it's not there. It's still there. Everything that person is feeling and dealing with is still there every day. And so I challenge you all to think about not just the mindset of the attacker, but also the mindset of your own workforce, the people around you at every level, from the board to senior leaders, to your peers, to your fellow employees, to the people in the business. There is this human factor. So human beings can be vulnerable. Sometimes people are more vulnerable than others because they've told you they are, or they've shown you they are. But I will tell you, from half my career as a clinical social worker, most people are very resilient, much more resilient than you can imagine. And when faced with very adversarial circumstances, most people figure out a way to prevail in some way. It might not be the way they want, it might hurt a lot, but many people prevail. Humans are biased, they're just inherently biased. We all have biases. They used to teach us in social work school, if anybody says that they don't have a bias, they're not being authentic. Everybody's got biases. So if we go in understanding that can help us. We all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We don't need to belabor that, but we know that nobody's perfect. We are all going to make mistakes. And most of the time, it's not from a malicious heart. Most humans are not motivated by malice. These two last ones, I'm going to just focus on for 1 second. Our leaders, and including myself as a leader, we can be disengaged. We are not on 100% of the time. So the perfectionism that some of us expect from ourselves or our family or our leaders, that's not realistic. Leaders can be disengaged. Leaders can be unprepared. Leaders cannot have a good understanding of what's going on, or they just might not know, right? So if you can come at that with, people are just trying to do the best job they can with the story that they come from and where they're going, they're not going to be perfect, because none of us are. Boards can be inadequately informed. There are, those folks who talk to boards or sit on boards, it's not surprising how much we all, including myself, want to go before a board and make things seem like we've got it under control. That doesn't mean it's good or bad. I'm not subscribing that feeling. What I'm saying is sometimes boards, they're just not well informed. And most of them aren't cyber, privacy, and certainly not social work experts. So think about it that way for any of you that have sort of board level responsibilities. Your boards are coming at you with not nearly the information they should have or know to make decisions. So that's up to us. Privacy and security technology alone is not going to be 100% effective. You have to be able to understand the human experience. Privacy and security rely on people, and they also rely on these concepts that people have to have a level of control over their life. If they don't feel they have some level of autonomy, and we sort of talked about the ability to make decisions, that is very stifling for people. People don't like that. Some people want more control than others, but you have to understand that each human being has a level of control that they need to feel comfortable in their world. People, are part of the defense in depth strategy. Errors are often unintentional. So I would encourage you, if you see errors in thought or action in any area, just check, just ask. It's very easy. People who know me, I like to say a lot, help me understand, or let me parrot back what I think you're saying so that I can check. Also, people who know me, really, I'm being super vulnerable with this group. Also, people who know me know that I'm an incredibly sensitive human being. If you looked at me at work, like my staff would probably be a little surprised that I said that out loud, because I don't show that too much at work. It's not part of my mask at work, right? Nobody wants their CISO or CPO to be all out there and be like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's sort of the way, but we all have those times when we're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. That happens to all of us. So it's really important to check. If you don't know, or you're sensitive, or you're not sure about something, ask. And then one of the other speakers talked about social media. That is a whole nother talk, but you cannot live in this day and age without thinking or knowing that social media is just influential. That's sort of a given, that's an obvious. Okay, so this idea of inclusion provides this attachment. We all want to feel included. Some of us want to feel really included in things, and some of us just want a little bit of inclusion every now and then. But even the people who are the most sincerest of introverts want to feel included at some level with certain people. So think about that, and where you are. What kind of level inclusion do you like? But do you subscribe that to other people as well? This concept is sort of being helpful. It's the whole thing about rewards. It's why, when you give a gift to someone, it makes you feel good. That's that concept, because you're helping somebody else. And that is more biology. There's receptors in the brain that make us feel good when we do things for others. Okay, this concept of uncertainty, a lot of this, we see this a lot in social media, but, some people feel that when they feel uncertain with things, or they don't feel like they've got a good handle on something, it makes them feel really icky. And so this concept of something is unknown or unpredictable, incomplete, imperfect, you don't have all the information, or you've been given the wrong information, that's a little bit unsettling for people. So just think about that. Are you coming to the table in your human interactions with the most accurate information? We don't always have all the information when we come. This I sort of stuck in here, this concept of truth. And I use the word, it's a subtle concept here, and it varies by person, and sometimes it varies by the circumstance we're in. It's the best thing that I can say to give an example of this is that everybody has their own truth. It's why, again, I'll sort of give examples from my own life. It's why when I'm with my family, certain members of my family have this political view and some have this, and why there's this tension. A lot of it is because they hold different truths. So it's sort of a relative concept for some people. In this room, we might be thinking, how can that possibly be? The truth is the truth. But that's your truth. That doesn't mean that's somebody else's truth. And then, of course, in the workplace or even in your home, different stakeholders have different levels of knowledge. So we talked about how the board doesn't always have all the information. Sometimes our leaders don't always have all the information. Sometimes if you're a leader, you don't always give your employees all the information because leaders can't spill everything to their employees all the time. So those are just some things to think about as well. This concept that awareness, so being aware of your surroundings, not like you're sitting in here and we originally talked about the lighting, the food, the smells, the people. Like being aware is important. You cannot be aware of everything all the time. But when something feels especially good or especially bad, that's the time to pay attention. That's the time to have awareness. Because something is, there's something about the executive function of the brain that's sort of letting you know something, right? And so this type of awareness, or what we're talking about, isn't inherent to everybody. So not everybody goes to situations and they're like super aware. Like I was just saying, like, wow, it's really bright in here, or, that salad was super tasty. Like nobody thinks about that. Some people do, and that's okay. But this is really something that has to be taught. Like we got to talk about it, because unless you talk about it, people aren't going to know. Like when you go into a situation, for example, if you're going to a meeting and you know that you're worried that it's going to be tense or you're going to have to deliver bad news, that kind of awareness before you go in is super helpful to you, because you will be able to regulate yourself, right? It's that whole, putting this all together, it's that whole about impulse control, how you conduct yourself, what other people are showing you back. Those kinds of awareness can help you adjust your message, for example, or how you're delivering information, or how much information you're delivering. All important. So this concept about teaching, communicating, modeling good behavior, again, isn't something that we all grow up learning. Some of us do. Some of us have to be taught it. Some of us never learn it. All that is okay. Just need to know that the people you're interacting with could be anywhere on that spectrum based on where they come from or what their experiences are. People, again, want attachment. We talked about that, to fluctuating degrees, right? Some people really want to be like around people and like they thrive on that. And some people are like, I want to see a single human being once every 3 weeks. Again, totally fine. Just understand that for some people, I'll use my daughter as an example. She doesn't like people. I love people. I'm a social worker. I'm not really sure she's my daughter, but nonetheless, she doesn't like humans. She's got a ton of dogs. She had a lizard. She had a bunch of guinea pigs. Like, that's her thing, okay? That doesn't mean she never wants to be around people, though. That's the key, is what I'm talking about. It just means that when she's in a room like this, it's extremely exhausting for her. The ability to sit at a table and try to think of things that she wants to say to people and eat and not spill on herself and all this other stuff that, some of us, like me, I'm just like, if I spilled some on myself, I do. Not everybody feels the way we do. And so understanding that sometimes, if you are across from somebody like my daughter and she's feeling exhausted by the conversation and she's tuning out, it's not you. That's just who she is, right? And so that's what I also mean by sometimes, like, we might misread a situation. She often gets told that, people feel she is sort of standoffish. She doesn't want to be seen that way. But that's what people see. That's what her interaction shows people, because they're misreading her, or they don't know her, or she hasn't been authentic in telling them. Look, I have a hard time with people. Maybe she doesn't want to say that at work. I don't know. But that's what I mean. Understanding the people you're interacting with to the extent that you can. Everybody's experience is meaningful. We talked at the very beginning about this social work principle of just dignity and worth, how every single human being in the world has dignity and worth. Everybody. And so if we can come, am I done? My time? They're cutting me off. If everybody could, I didn't see the hand wave. Did you hand wave me? Oh shoot. Okay. All right. So that's it. Questions? If you tell me the question, oh, I don't have any time at all. I have no time at all. Sorry. Oh, I do have time? One question. Yes. Oh, okay. See, this is now you have all learned a lot about me. I love to talk and I love people.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karen, for that great presentation and insight into human behavior. My question is, if the board we all, rely on to lead an organization knowledgeably and effectively, if they are sometimes, don't have enough knowledge to make informed decisions, what could be the risks to organizations, and how would they lead effectively if they are not informed well? And again, how could that gap be bridged? And by whom? Who could do that? Who could help them do that?
Yeah, so this is a good question, and I'll give just a tiny answer, and then if you want, we can talk offline. I think so this goes back to culture, the culture of your board. And so depending on the board you're dealing with, some boards are more open to having discussion outside of regular board meetings, and some are super strict. Like, they only want to give you 10 minutes every quarter, figure out how to, make it fit. So some of that is just like company culture. And so reading the room and knowing your company's culture is probably the first thing I would tell you. If they're, the risks, I think many of us understand the risks. The risks are that you won't be funded properly. They will not understand the actual cyber privacy risks going on. Maybe the person presenting might make it seem better than it really is because they don't want the hard questions. I mean, there are lots of risks. At the end of the day, all of that boils down to when something happens, the board's going to turn around and be like, but I thought you said it was okay. Or I didn't fully understand what you were trying to tell me. So any way that you can make it be obvious without making them paranoid, right? I mean, because we all in this room go to bed paranoid enough. I mean, we don't need to make our boards paranoid too. But I do think there's a balance between, making them paranoid just slightly so they understand the risk, but also telling them how you're going to fix it. I mean, at the end of the day, my take on it is this. These people are not dumb. I mean, these are very smart people that sit on boards. And so they know the cyber is a risk. They all know it. I mean, one need only, open up social media to know, it's a risk. They want to know at the end of the day, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to fix that? And then they want to see you deliver on that. Because if you don't, then you're going to have these whole things about trust, and they're not going to believe you, and you're going to have a whole other problem going on. So I don't know. That's just a tiny bit because I'm out of time. But yeah, I mean, boards are an important thing because they're the ones at the end of the day, that are going to fund you, and that's that leadership tone at the top. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, I'm coming.
Thank you so much. We never, ever, ever like